At the beginning of the film, we learn that, from the beginning, people wanted to create powerful and reliable machines. However, they are still the most dangerous form of transport. The actor from the advertisement convinces us that with a Monolith, you can be sure of your safety. This car has special armor, impenetrable windows, and a lot of danger sensors. But the main feature of the Monolith is the safe mode. In addition, the car has artificial intelligence, Lilith, which creates additional comfort for the driver. Thanks to these innovations, the Monolith is one of the most comfortable and safe places for the driver and his family. The main character is impressed by such an advertisement and buys such a car. Sandra rides in it with her son and begins to communicate with artificial intelligence. The girl asks to be called simply Sandra, but then realizes that Lilith is pronouncing it incorrectly. Sandra calls her name again and is surprised when the artificial intelligence realizes that there is a child in the back seat. Lilith explains that she understood this from the weight of the boy. Dear viewers, we have a new voiceover artist, David. Please vote on the quality of his work in the community section that you see in the picture. Thank you all very much for your time. The artificial intelligence gets to know David and shows him an animation with his name on it. Sandra jokingly asks if Lilith knows her weight. The device reports that the character weighs 55 kilograms, which greatly upsets the woman. Standing at a traffic light, Sandra asks if people of other weight have driven in this car. The character studies the information received from Lilith and is perplexed, since Carl, his friend with his girlfriend, and someone very thin were in the car. Sandra suspects it was a girl. The character continues to drive to her parents when she receives a call from Carl. The man greets his son tenderly and explains to his wife that he flew to Los Angeles for work. Sandra tries to be friendly and says that it's a little strange for her that her husband is constantly away from her. Carl doesn't answer and reminds the girl to download updates for the Monolith to her phone. Sandra laughs and says that David has now received her phone. The character turns gloomy again when she hears that Carl, who has a weakness for flight attendants, has rented a room near the airport. Sandra drops the call and stops at a gas station to change her son's diaper. In the toilet, the character hears a group of young girls discussing a recent party and new guys. Sandra remembers that she used to be the same, but now she needs to take care of David. The character still lets her hair down to look younger and more attractive. While shopping, Sandra chooses toys for David and gets upset that he calls her by her name. A young guy approaches the character at the register. He recognizes Sandra and she tells him that she really used to be a popular singer. The guy offers to go to a party and have a good time, but the character says that she needs to take care of her son. Sandra gets upset when the guy sarcastically remarks that apparently it was because of David that the girls' group broke up. Turning around, Sandra realizes that she has lost sight of her son. The girl calls David and runs out into the street. The boy ends up in the car with 3 girls whom Sandra saw in the toilet. The lady shouts at them and asks why they didn't tell her where her son was right away. The girls are angry because they are the ones who found David wandering around the gas station, and they call Sandra a bad mother. The guy from the store calls out to the character again, and together with the girls, he approaches her car. Frustrated, Sandra gets inside, turns on the safe mode, and leaves the parking lot. Continuing the journey, the lady turns on her old song and tells her son that it was thanks to her that she met Carl. Sandra calls her friend with whom they were in a band together. Jessa says that her new album is a successful, thanks to Carl. It was he who helped the girl by giving her the contacts of a good producer. Sandra begins to suspect that it was Jessa who was in this car earlier. The character asks the girl about her weight. When Sandra hears that Jessa is renting a room at the airport, she gets angry and thinks that she is in Carl's room. The girl says that she will be a vocalist instead of the character, but she is not sleeping with her husband. Sandra tries to call Jessa or Carl again, but both don't pick up the phone. The character, having reached her destination, decides to turn the car around. Sandra decides to come to her husband in Los Angeles. Lilith reports that there is a traffic jam on the highway. At Sandra's request, the device plots the fastest route. The character is not very happy about the prospect of a trip through the fields, but understands that it will really be much faster way. Sandra decides to smoke a little in the car, which triggers the smoke detectors. The character gets angry and disables additional functions. Sandra turns to her son and does not notice a deer running out onto the road. In a panic, the character gives her son a phone, offering to play a game, and decides to get out of the car. Sandra cries when she sees that the deer is still alive, but suffering. The character decides to push him away with a stick. Meanwhile, instead of playing, David logs into the app that controls the Monolith. The boy accidentally turns on the safe mode. A frightened Sandra runs up to the window and tries to explain to David how to swipe the screen to turn it off. However, the boy is scared by the screams and drops the phone on the floor. Sandra tries to talk to Lilith and convince her to open the car. When this fails, the character tries to break the window with a stone. However, the glass turns out to be very durable. Crying, David shouts that he wants to get out. Sandra tries to calm him down and explains that she will go for help. The character is very angry at Carl, believing that everything happened because of him. Sandra enters the station, but there is no one there, and the phone rings only in a closed office. The character takes a flashlight and a large wrench to try to open the car. On the way, Sandra hears strange noises. Running, the character gets to the car and climbs onto the roof. Sandra manages to cope with the attacking coyote. David starts to get nervous and isn't breathing well. Sandra realizes that she cannot give her son an inhaler, and she asks him to calm down. The lady lies down on the bodywork and looks at the sky. Suddenly, Sandra remembers that there is an airport nearby. The character calls David but realizes that he isn't in the car. The door is open, but the boy is nowhere to be found. Sandra wakes up from a nightmare late in the morning. The character sees that it is getting very hot in the car and asks David to try to unbutton his jacket. Sandra tells her son that she needs to leave for a while to ask for help at the airport. The character wanders through a hot wasteland, but fortunately finds a river. Sandra washes her face and continues climbing up the cliff. The girl sees the plane and realizes that she has finally reached the right point. However, after looking around, Sandra suddenly realizes that the place turned out to be abandoned. The girl approaches the plane and climbs inside. Sandra finds various items that can help her in freeing her son. She makes a huge bonfire to attract the attention of rescuers. Sandra also takes water with her and runs back to her son. Looking out the window, she realizes that David is getting worse and he does not hear her. Sandra pours water on the roof, hoping it will get cooler. The mother makes a fire in front of the car, hoping that the doors will unlock and she will save her son. However, this hope is not justified either, since she had previously disabled additional functions herself. Until the evening, the mother tries to hack the car to save David. Weakened, Sandra falls asleep and has a dream in which Carl rightly calls her guilty of what happened to the boy. It was the girl who put warm clothes on him and strongly strapped him to the chair. It was Sandra who turned off the security system. She didn't allow Lilith to control the car. She also hit a deer and gave her son a phone. Carl says she's the reason for what happened to David. Sandra, crying, tries to explain that she only wanted to protect him. In the morning, the girl wakes up from the scorching sun. Sandra runs to the window and sees her son sitting in the same position. Crying, the character tells David that she is beside him, just like when he was in her stomach. Turning around, Sandra sees a jackal in front of her. The girl realizes that her fire has gone unnoticed, and no one will come to save them, no matter what she does. Sandra apologizes to her son for putting him in such terrible danger. Suddenly, Sandra sees that David's fingers are moving. The mother understands that her son is still alive, and it makes sense to continue the fight. Sandra hides from the jackal under the car and tries to fight him off. She releases the deer carcass, letting the animal feast on it. The jackal gets distracted by the meat and leaves Sandra alone. However, a new problem arises. The car David is sitting in starts rolling down. Sandra tries her to stop her, realizing that the trajectory of movement leads to a huge cliff. The girl screams and presses on the bodywork, but the heavy monolith continues its movement. Sandra is crying in pain and fear, but then the wheel hits a stone and the car stops near the edge. The character looks at her son, then at the jackal, and asks if this is the end of everything. Sandra makes a terrible decision. She tries to break the stone that saves the car from falling into the abyss. The girl can't do it with her hands, and the wrench is near the deer. Fearless, Sandra screams at the jackal, and she manages to scare the animal away. The character breaks a stone under the wheel and pushes the car towards the cliff. During the fall, the monolith turns on the unlock and tries to land on the wheels. Sandra sees a cloud of dust below and starts walking down the cliff. The mother gets a lot of minor injuries in a hurry, but continues on her way. After going down, Sandra tries to clear the windows of dust in order to see her son in the car. Suddenly, the girl notices that the red glow on the handles has disappeared. Sandra opens the monolith and pulls her son out of it. The mother sits down with David in the shade and undresses him to reduce the heat from the suit. Sandra is crying because the boy still does not wake up, and he could have been very badly injured from the fall. Besides, the character is miles away from people. Monolith may not be able to drive after the fall, and prowling jackals will not let her walk to the highway with David. A computer code flashes on the panel of the Monolith. Suddenly, the control device returns to normal and emits a signal that Sandra hears. The girl runs to the car and tries to figure out if she can drive it. Lilith does not respond, but the Monolith responds to steering turns and turning on the gas. Sandra puts her son back in the chair and prepares for the trip. The character realizes that she cannot build a route. Sandra sees a steep rise, at the top of which is the road. With the help of maneuvering and automatic control, the character manages to climb the track. At the hospital, David wakes up and calls the character Mom. This is the end of the movie. Thank you all for watching this video to the end. Give this video a like. Write in the comments what you think about this movie, and see you in new videos.